Hey guys, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. It's been a couple weeks since I've seen you guys. Went on vacation last week, and I know you have Mr. Joe, and he's been doing a great job. He's been a huge help to me, filling in whenever I'm gone, absent. So when you see Mr. Joe, please tell him that you appreciate him. He's been a great servant for our youth group and a big help to me. But we're hoping that this week would start the week that we could actually get back to our normal routine of meeting on Wednesday nights. And we had this big cookout planned where we were going to kind of hang out and do some things together. But the government, the state, decided to go ahead and postpone the next phase of our told us we couldn't meet together for another month. So we're going to keep doing the videos. I know this is not what we all want, but it is something. It's better than nothing at all. So just hang in there, keep watching the videos, keep listening and paying attention, and I promise you, one of these days we will get back to our nights of worship and our hanging out in the student building and eating together and just doing life together and having fun. So pay attention to our social media so that you can stay up to date on what we know as far as when we can actually start back and do some of the things that we used to do. So like I said, last week I was on vacation, went to the beach with my family, and it got me thinking about this topic tonight, and a story you've probably heard 1,000 times, but I want to go over it because it's a great story. So it's summertime. Even though we have this pandemic going on, there's still a lot of you that are going to the beach and going on vacation. I think the beach is probably where the majority of us go, just because it's convenient. It's probably the closest. But I was thinking about this while we were going. The toughest part about traveling to a vacation spot, wherever you're going, is obviously the traveling. Okay, the day that you leave, if you get in the car and hey, we got a 10-hour travel. I think it took us like 8 hours to get to where we were going. And the toughest part about it is the actual car ride, the traveling. Now, if I'm driving, it's not as bad because I'm more alert and more awake. But like just sitting there in a car for 8 hours, just traveling and driving is so boring. And you have to think of so many different things to do. And I know a lot of you probably try to prepare yourself. What am I going to do? I'm going to do this for the first couple hours. Some of you have DVD players in your car, so you play movies, and which is very convenient because you can watch 2 or 3 movies and pretty much be there by the time they're done. But some of us don't have DVD players, so what do? We listen to our music. We have a Nintendo Switch we bring with us. We use our cell phones to play games. All of those things. But what happens whenever you either get bored of those things or your batteries die in your technology? What happens then? What do you do? Something we used to do. And I know this is going to date me pretty good. Don't laugh, because we still had phones. Okay, we had like Snake and Pong or something on our phones, and we could play the little thing where you have like the 2 things and you have to hit the ball back and forth and keep it, goes fast. Anyway, those games were kind of boring after a while, so we had to come up with some old-fashioned games to play. So we would have what we call car games. Okay, now these are going to sound really corny, but I want you to think about how bored you would have to be to actually be excited to play some of these games. So I'll give you 3 examples. One of them was where you had to count the number of cars that you saw, and the first person who gets like 500 cars won. Yeah, talk about boring. You'd have to be pretty bored to play that game. The second one was where you would take a piece of paper and you'd write down all 50 states, and every time you would see a license plate from a different state, you would mark it off your list, and the first person, by the time you got there, whoever the most license plates won. And then the third game was probably the most fun, which we played the most, was I think it was called the ABC game or something like that, where if you saw a road sign or a billboard, and you would start from the letter A, and if you saw an A in the billboard or an A in the road sign, you would move on to the next letter, A, B, C, D, F, G, all the way to Z, and whoever got to the last letter, Z, and then they would win. So that was a game we played. Um, you know, and like I said, we didn't have a whole lot to choose from. I don't think we had DVD players back then in our cars. We didn't have cell phones that had very good games on them. But we made our own fun, and but just the excitement of going on the trip sometimes was enough to kind of get you through playing a boring game or playing a silly game, because you knew at the end of this trip, in the next 8 hours or however many hours you're traveling, you were about to have fun. You were about to be on vacation. So even though we're going to talk about somebody tonight, probably a little bit different than a vacation, but somebody that had something happen to them on a road trip. This kind of made me think about that as an illustration. But 2,000 years ago, you probably heard this story before, like I said a minute ago. But listen to it. It is good. We can always learn from the same story over and over again. This is a story about probably the single most influential person in our Bible other than Jesus. And it's about Saul, okay? So pre-Paul, this is Saul, okay? He grew up in a city called Tarsus, okay? And Tarsus was a very diverse city. It was a very busy city, cram-packed with a lot of people in what is modern-day Turkey now, okay? And he had a Jewish family. And so as a teenager, Saul moved to Jerusalem, according to history books, to actually study Scripture. So if you know anything about Paul before he was a Christian, okay, he actually had Christian tendencies before he was a bad guy, okay? And so he studied Scripture, he knew it well, but he had obviously a lot going on, and something happened along his path of his life where he decided that he didn't agree with Christianity. And so after Jesus was crucified, when this movement of Christianity started to spread, that claimed that God was the only way to heaven, the only God that was real, and not only that, he had raised Jesus from the dead. Saul was there, one of the first ones there to fight against this particular notion. So it says in Acts chapter 9 verse 1 right off the bat that Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill all of the Lord's followers. Okay, so the fact that he just wanted to kill all of them lets you know that he had a hatred in his heart for what this ideology stood for, this doctrine of the fact that that God was so powerful that he would raise his own son from the dead. It made Saul so angry and so evil that he was willing to murder all of the Lord's followers, according to Acts chapter 9. So, and he didn't just fight against the Jesus movement in Jerusalem. It says in Acts chapter 9, after that verse, the second part of verse 1 and 2, it says he went to the high priest. He requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus, okay, and asking for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way, okay, that was what they referred to as Jesus, it's capital W, the way, the arrest of any followers of him that he found in Damascus, okay? So Paul basically had an end it movement. He wanted to eradicate this notion that Jesus was the only way to heaven. He wanted to eradicate Christianity, period, completely from the world. So he took a road trip to Damascus. And Damascus is about 150 miles north of Jerusalem, and Google Maps says it would take about 5 hours to make a car trip there in a car today from where he was. Okay, so back then it would have taken close to 2 weeks. Okay, on foot, on a donkey, however they traveled, it would take about 2 weeks to get there. Now imagine being that angry that you're willing to walk for 2 weeks just to kill people who believed in a certain faith, okay? So here's what happened on the way. It says, as he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. And he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Who are you, Lord? Saul asked, and the voice replied, I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. And so that must have caught Saul by surprise, okay? So he's He doesn't believe that Jesus actually rose from the dead. He doesn't believe that God rose him from the dead. He doesn't believe God is real. He doesn't believe Christianity is real. And all of a sudden, he sees Jesus standing there. It's like, rip. All of those times that you made fun of it, he's actually, that man is actually standing in front of you right now. So he was probably surprised. He was on his way to Damascus when this happened. He was getting very close. He wanted to defend the End It movement, right? He wanted to defend the opposite side of what Jesus was standing for, that he was truly sent from God and he was truly raised from the dead. And then at this moment, he realized that he was wrong on both accounts, okay? It was that moment that he realized that Jesus was alive, Jesus was real, and God had to be real because of that, okay? And so he knew that Jesus was a real person because he heard the stories of him being crucified, okay? He knew that he was a real person, but he did not believe that he was alive. And then, so all of a sudden, Jesus appears to him and addresses him by name, Saul, okay? And it made him pay attention, made him start to rethink everything that he thought was true about Jesus, that maybe he'd gotten it wrong. And I don't even think you can say maybe at that point, because he's literally standing right in front of you. So it says in Acts chapter 9, verse 8 and 9, it says, Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by the hand to Damascus, and he remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. So Saul was dazed and confused, and he couldn't see. And there are a lot of different opinions on why Jesus blinded Saul on that day. A lot of it was there's a couple people that believe that it was an exhibition of God's power, that he wanted to show Saul that he was real, that his power was real. The second one was that he didn't want any distractions. That when he got to where he was going, when he got to Damascus, he wanted Saul to have a time of reflection and thought where he could process everything that he just saw without any distraction. He couldn't see anybody. He had to lay down and he had to rest. It was a time for him to think about what had happened. And the third one was because what's going to happen in a few minutes, he had to be blind in order for this to happen. So I'll get to that in just a second. So I want you to think about for a moment what he might have been thinking about when he was in Damascus. Those 3 days where he did not eat anything, he did not drink anything, he just laid there, he rested. Think about what was going through his mind. Was he going crazy? Had he hallucinated the whole thing where he had seen Jesus on the road to Damascus? Was that actually real? Did that really happen? And then, meanwhile, while he's thinking about all these things, a believer in Damascus named Ananias also had a vision of Jesus. And in his vision, okay, Jesus told him to go and meet Saul. So Saul had a vision or a meeting with Jesus himself. Ananias in Damascus had a vision where he was told to go meet Saul. Now that may sound like, you may brush that aside, okay, it's just a vision. He got his orders from the Lord and he was ready to go. But think about those orders for just a second. Saul had a reputation, okay? And Ananias didn't know anything about what had happened to Saul on the road to Damascus. So he gets orders from the Lord to go see this man who's a murderous, basically a psychopath that wants to kill all of the Christians that exist in the world. And he's coming straight for Damascus. And the Lord tells Ananias to go meet him, okay? So he's probably thinking, I don't know if that's a good idea. Listen to what he says in Acts 9:13-14. He says, but the Lord exclaimed, Ananias, I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to believers in Jerusalem, and he is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name. Okay? So it's not exactly the job that he wanted. It's like, God, when I told you that I'd do anything for you and go anywhere for you, it meant that I'd do anything that was easy and anywhere that was fun. This does not sound easy. This does not sound fun. It doesn't even sound like I'm going to be alive at the end of this meeting. So I don't really want to meet up. I don't think it's a good idea to meet up with somebody that's going to hurt me. But obviously, he didn't have all of the information, all of the puzzle pieces. You never know what God might be up to. in someone's life, and even somebody as hateful as Saul. Okay, and so you might have a problem. I want to stop right there and kind of give you some application, kind of give you some food for thought. You might have a friend or even a family member who right now they've basically checked out on Jesus. They have denied him. They may not even believe in Christianity. They may have just kind of washed their hands of it all. They may have been a Christian once or claimed to be a Christian once, and then some things happened, and they just decided that it wasn't for them. They're just not interested in that conversation anymore. Okay, they don't want to hear about Jesus. That's kind of what it is. They've moved on from that. The thing about the story that can get to us sometimes and give us some encouragement is that Jesus is always up to something, and the goal for us is to keep praying for them anyway, even when you don't think there's any hope for that person, or they don't think there's any hope for themselves. Keep praying for that person, because you never know what Jesus might be doing and the people that seem to hate him the most. You never know what God is doing. So it's never a bad thing to pray, to continually pray for those types of people. So Jesus told Ananias, after he had made his claim that probably going to see Paul or Saul, he's Saul still right now, it's probably not the best idea, because he probably is going to be murdered. Okay, he's going to kill me in the streets. I don't think I should go. So Jesus told Ananias this. He says, "Go, for Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings, as well as to the people of Israel." So Acts 9:15 tells us that Saul is the chosen instrument of the Lord. Now, he could have chosen anybody. He could have chosen Ananias, who was already obviously somewhat familiar with God and Christianity, because Jesus gave him a vision, and he seemed pretty okay with, doing whatever he asked him to do until he asked him to do this. He could have chosen him, but he chose Saul. He chose this murderer to be his instrument, to be the one that would go from sinner to saint, from persecutor to preacher, the enemy of Jesus, who would become one of the greatest people in our time, in history, who would spread the gospel of Christ around the world. He chose Saul. Okay? It's hard to believe that this would be his best choice or his first choice. Maybe Ananias had his doubts, but he went anyway. Okay? So it says in Acts 9:17, it says, "So Ananias went and found Saul, and he laid his hands on him and said, 'Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me so that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit.' And instantly something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized." So in one road trip, Saul's life changed. Even his name changed. Saul is the one who would change his name, or be changed. His name would be changed to Paul the Apostle. And God got his attention and changed his direction. And there's a connection between attention and your direction. As I thought about this story and the story of your lives, a couple of questions kind of came to mind in thinking about this. Number one, have you been paying attention to Jesus? I've said this before, and I'll continue to say this probably until the day I die, because it will be true, it will be evident, I believe, by the time I'm old, that it's the longer we live, the busier life is going to get. I truly believe that. And right now, it's already extremely busy. It's busy. It's easy to get busy with school, even though we're not in school. You're thinking about it. You're replacing that anyway with other things. But when you're in school, it's easy to get busy with it. It's easy to get busy with the school assignments and your homework and tests and having good grades. And those are all good things. But it's very, very easy. That is the point of this. It's easy to get busy. Okay, and on top of school, if that's all you had to worry about, you would probably be okay. But you still have sports games that you have to prepare for. You have music practice, you have band practice, you have all of these different things that you're involved in, dance, cheer, that that they build on top of each other, and you become busier and busier and busier. And summer is here right now, and think about how a normal summer would be for you. Some of you are still treating summer like it's a normal summer. You're going out, you're doing these things, you're going on vacations, you're trying to spend as much time with your friends as possible. You're still busy because nobody wants to sit around at the house and do nothing all the time, right? You're still trying to keep yourself busy. So it's very easy to lose, for Jesus to lose your attention during the summertime. It's very easy for Jesus to lose your attention at your age when you're busy with so many things. And so that's the first question I have. Have you been paying attention to Christ? And what is he trying to tell you in your life right now that you need to change or modify about your behavior or your witness to lead people to Christ? Okay. Second thing is, what has Jesus been trying to say? Okay. Now we've talked about this since the beginning of the pandemic. I've said that Jesus is trying to teach us something through this. I still believe that's true. I don't believe that there is any wasted moment where Jesus puts our salvation or our the building up of our character on hold just because something is happening in the world. First of all, he is in control of all things. So Jesus is still on a mission to make us who he wants us to be, even in this downtime that we have, or where there's not a lot going on. Jesus is still talking, and we should still be listening. And so the question is, are you listening? The third thing I want you to see or ask yourself, which is probably the toughest one to answer, is, do you need a change of direction? Is the direction that you're going not the one that Jesus is wanting for you? Now, you can fool your parents, you can fool your teachers, you can fool your youth pastor, but you know the truth. Are you becoming the kind of person that you've always wanted to become, or have you settled for less? Have you settled for less and made compromises along the way to either entertain yourself or entertain other people? Which direction are you heading in today? And if you were Saul on that road and Jesus stopped you, which direction would he want you to go? Would he want you to keep going down the path that you're going, or would he want you to change directions at that moment? Are you paying attention to Jesus, or are you ignoring him? It's the simplest things about these stories that we can learn from over and over and over again. There's a quote, and I'm probably going to butcher this because I don't have it in front of me. But I believe her name is Cary Grant. She's an old librarian, old historian. And she says, Christianity is a mixture of amnesia and deja vu, where we keep relearning the things we keep forgetting. And so a lot of these stories that we read over and over again, we know that they are beneficial for us because they're Christian history, right? And Saul, or Paul, being one of the greatest preachers to ever live, one of the greatest apostles, one of the greatest world changers to ever live, reading anything about his life is very beneficial to us because he's so influential. But these stories are so simple, and we've read them so many times, but there's so much application. They're so rich in education that we read them and we go, what if that were me? What if I were in the position of Paul? What if I were in the position of Ananias? What about this story can change the trajectory of my life? And if it does anything at all, it makes you evaluate your situation right now. If I was Paul and Jesus showed up to me, would he want me to stay on the same direction, the same path that I'm headed down now, or would he want me to change? Am I doing the things that he wants me to do, or am I doing the things that entertain myself or entertain my friends? Have I compromised my faith to entertain people who call me their friend, or I associate myself with, that I want to be around, that I have fun with, that I go on vacations with? Am I compromising my faith to entertain them? And if the answer is yes, then there has to be a healthy balance in your life where you have friends, but your intention and focus is on Jesus. And some of us don't have that healthy balance. Some of us are completely 95% friends on the weekends, friends during the week right now because it's summertime, friends all the time, and then that 5% is spent towards Jesus, and that's really pretty much maybe watching half of this video tonight, and then Sunday morning church with your family. Okay, that's your 5%. That's what you give it, and that's not enough to know. If Jesus is talking to you, that's not enough. That our lives need to be consumed with Him, and it's okay to have the friends and go on the trips and have fun. Sometimes it's nice to get away, but thinking about getting away, being isolated from the world, the things that distract me, even being a youth pastor, help me see God more clearly, help me listen to Him more clearly. And so, but that should be our goal when we isolate ourselves from everything else. Is this going to be an opportunity for me to hear from the Lord? Is this going to be an opportunity for God to speak to me and tell me if the direction that I'm heading down is the right one? Because if you're a true Bible-believing Christian, God's opinion of you should be the only one that matters. And if I could ask Him right now and He would answer audibly in this room, God, is the direction that I'm headed down the one that you want me to go down? Are the people that I'm reaching the ones that matter to you? And am I reaching them for the right things? If those are the questions you ask yourself and you can answer them and you don't like the answers, or you don't think that you could answer them truthfully and it'd be pleasing to God, then maybe you ought to think about this story and think about what direction God wants for your life. I'm hoping that you guys are staying involved with your quiet time, your prayer life, with church, watching these videos, paying attention to them, taking notes. They're very important, and we're going to be back soon. I really am looking forward to it. I want to be able to be around you guys and just hear about the things that are going on in your lives. I think that's the one thing that we as leaders miss the most, is being around you guys and hearing all of the great things that you're going through. And obviously, we're not going through a whole lot right now because everybody's isolated, but we do love you guys. We're looking forward to being back on Wednesdays. We will have our cookout whenever we can when we get back from this quarantine stuff. But stay tuned for on our Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. We will post immediately once we know something, and we'll get back to church soon. So hope you enjoyed the video. Please let your friends know, and think about what was said tonight. And we are praying for you guys. We love you guys, and we hope you're doing well.